Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this, the 11th TransformGov Talks. You'll be hearing from Rachel and Katy shortly. I'm Gavin Freegard, one of the organisers, and it's lovely to have so many of you in the room and also online tonight as well. Very cold outside. You might have made the right decision to stay at home, wrapped up nice and warm. Hands up if you've been to TransformGov Talks before. Welcome back. Hands up if this is your first time. Welcome. We hope we'll make you come back again. We've had a few technical problems this evening, but not quite as many as the OBR had earlier, so it could be worse. A quick intro for those of you who are new to TransformGov Talks, or those of you who've come back. TransformGov Talks is a space for people who care about making government work better. And we have 2 presentations and questions at each event from people who've thought about how to do that. It might be things they're trying in government, it might be reports from the outside, people with new perspectives, different ways of doing things, things that work, and some things that don't work as well, as we've discovered with the tech this evening. We're live streaming and on the record, as those of you online will know. This is not just about data, digital and tech as a series. We've also had lots of people talking about public engagement, new ways of thinking about policy, even a potted history of the National Audit Office. So a wonderful variety of things that you will find, although we do have a wonderful data, AI, digital tech angle tonight. And of course, all of those things are really important, but for those of you in the room, also very importantly, there's free pizza afterwards. We're always looking for people to help us organise, to speak or to sponsor TransformGov Talks, so please do get in touch with us, transformgovtalks@gmail.com, if you would like to help us out. Some wonderful people who've already decided to do that are our sponsors, AMNUT, DXW, Holistic Agility, Public Digital and TPX Impact. A huge thank you to all of them, and if you would like to join them, please do let us know. We've had 10 events so far. You can see all of the speakers there. Last month we had Ed from the Office for Statistics Regulation up in the top left, and we had Lauren from the Government Internal Audit Agency on the right-hand side as well. But lots of wonderful speakers. You can find all of those on our website. So how is tonight going to work? You're going to get 2 brilliant presentations. Each will last for about 25 to 30 minutes. The speakers will present for a bit, and then we'll go into questions. If you're in the room, you can put your hand up. If you're in the room or online, you can go to Slido, and that's slido.com. The code you need is 2554962. We'll be finishing at around 7. There will be pizza for those in the room, and there will be the pub afterwards for those of you who'd like to go on to that. The Buckingham Arms, whether you're here in the room or running very quickly from watching online. If you are in the room and want to scan for Slido, I will speak slowly for a few moments. So you can put your phones up, and hopefully that link will work. I see a few phones going up. I will continue to talk and just waffle and see what happens, and hopefully that will work for you. Excellent. So who are our speakers tonight? Well, first of all, we're going to hear from Rachel Coldicutt, the founder and executive director of Careful Industries, who'll be talking about local government AI procurement and a new version of consequence scanning. She'll then be followed by Katy Beale, the Chief Delivery and Engagement Officer, Digital and Innovation at Westminster City Council, on rethinking local government technology. We are squeezing in a December event before the end of the year. I'll remind you about this at the end as well. Well, we'll be hearing from the School for International Futures and Civic Punks. Please note that December's event on the 10th of December will not be here at the MOJ. It will be at TPX Impact in Whitechapel. You can scan that if you'd like to get the code up. A reminder, it'll be in Whitechapel. Where? Whitechapel? Whitechapel. But tonight, we are here at the MOJ, and we're going to kick off with our first speaker, and that's Rachel.
Hello, everyone. So what I'm going to talk about, well, it will be unfair, but it's really about how I think we've got a lot of thought into when we're making a thing or trying we tend to think slightly less completely about when we have a technology tool that we use for something that we're using. Am I just not talking into it? It's very possible. So yeah, right. So I run an agency called Capital Industries. Our mission is to make technology work for 8 billion people, not 8 billionaires, which is like hard, but we're having a go. And at the beginning of the year, we began a piece of work with the Bristol Digital Futures Institute that was meant to be about procurement. So what we were meant to be doing was understanding how people in local government are procuring technology. We did a load of interviews and ran workshops. And one of the interesting things we found quite early on is that people are not procuring quite as much as they were. Now this varies. It depends, you know, if you're in a bigger local authority and you have more resource, maybe you are. But a lot of the smaller ones we talked to were kind of just working out how to make the best of what they had. And thinking about, now that we have all these tools that could do all kinds of things, how might they help in ways that no one had thought of previously? And particularly, we were thinking about this. And so I think pilot came up in every interview except for one, where there was a plucky local authority who were using Google, just the one. But this idea that actually there were lots of things that people had purchased previously that they didn't need to purchase if you could roll this out. And Catherine Howe, who's at Dorset now, talked about these tools as ambient, right? And I think this is a really interesting word, the idea that ambient is a thing you don't notice. It's just like hanging around, you're taking it for granted. And that felt to us like a really interesting thing. When we were talking to people about the ways that Copilot was being rolled out, a lot of them were not for things it was designed to do. And of course, it's designed to do everything. I think there's a quote from, oh, maybe, I can't remember who, but someone at Microsoft who basically says, like the purpose of Copilot is to change how work works, right? And so it adapts with you. And when we were talking to people about why they were doing that rather than purchasing things, we found the main reason was money. Basically, if there is something there that is cheap, free, that has already been procured, that you're not going to have to write a business case for, there's a reason to use it. There's another word that I think gets bandied about a lot that I'm not using here is efficiency. And I think efficiency, who knows what that really means, but we took it to mean doing more with less, right? And so whatever results you're expected, which are often very hard to measure, but that Copilot was felt to be something that helped with that. And the last thing really was that it was there, right? And that actually the fact that it was there and people knew how to use it, knew how to roll it out. They didn't need new hardware particularly, right? That they could keep moving, made it easier. However, when we then delved into the way that this was being used, we found that actually adoption of these tools can be as important as procurement. However, you don't jump through the hoops that you were with procurement. You're maybe not writing a business case. You may not be doing a data protection impact assessment because that's happened. You may not be thinking about what gets displaced and what moves. Overall, we found that like there was no one model of AI governance. And so we found that there were, in local authorities that were more technically adept, like there was maybe more time to think about ethics or, you know, the impacts of technology, but that didn't happen everywhere. And it was very often regarded to be IT, really. There's a kind of interesting thing that's a sort of a secondary consequence here, which is that once everything is made and delivered by one company, it becomes easier and easier and easier to remain within their world, and it becomes harder to do a different thing. And then the last thing is that knowledge and expertise is really varied. And so, in particular, we found that where there had been a real pressure on cost, and people were very head down, rolling pilot out, they maybe weren't even thinking about what it meant, right? Whereas in environments where you had design teams and service design, there was a very different approach. And so, and lastly, very often everything has to happen now, right? And that if it doesn't happen now, it won't ever happen. And that, you know, and so all these things together kind of build up, and you're in a world where it's maybe harder to purchase a better thing, and so you'll compromise. And so we'd begun this thinking about procurement and how to make things that made it easier to procure the technology that worked. And we realized that actually what would be more helpful was to help people understand the impact of the technologies they were adopting. So what we need to do is make something that would work and be easy to use if you worked in finance, IT, if you worked in design, if you worked in digital, which meant it couldn't be too complex. Now, in 2018, I made this thing called consequence scanning with a couple of colleagues at Everyone. And like 2018 is a million years ago now. But one of the things that did and was designed to do was to help specifically product teams who are making things have routines and rituals where they could work out what the impacts of the technology was likely to be. And I've been using it over the years, and one of the things I've realized is that a lot of the impacts of AI are quite hidden. And in the training that we do, you very often have to introduce the idea of bias or an environmental impact, and that people very often think differently about it once they've had training. But in a world where everyone is in a hurry and everything has to happen now, that is very, very hard. And so what we try to do here is make a thing that you could probably do an initial scan in half an hour, right? There might be things you can't resolve to come back to, but it will at least help you to think about and understand what's happening. And to develop this, we ran a number of workshops with people talking about everyone's current favorite thing, meeting notes. So voice to text, how that works. And what we noticed, right, is that everyone like really easily could talk about why it's good, right? And so there's a small number of things that everybody likes about it. What was interesting, though, is thinking about the difference between using it in one part of your organization or in one team is very different to using it everywhere. using it in meetings is very different to using it for customer support. It's very different to using it with vulnerable people. You know, there's all these different things that actually that initial use might be very anodyne, may have raised no risks in your PIA, but actually as you're running out, it becomes more and more complicated. And so we ran, I think, 4 workshops with people to work out what was on their mind, how they were thinking about voice to text. We came up with lots and lots of different things, but I think I'll just share 8 of the big ones. So the main thing is that voice to text is like, it kind of works 80% of the time. And I think what's particularly interesting is there are, like, if you're a person who has the C pronunciation accent, I obviously have a stutter. Copilot doesn't like it, I have to say. But if you're a person who talks in a normal way, it seems fine, right? If you're a person who has has an accent, if you have any variation in your speech, if you're speaking English as another language, right, the likelihood of it picking up everything correctly becomes lower. The other thing is, there's lots of like ambient things that aren't quite right, but they're sort of right enough that you kind of go, yeah, that's okay, right? But thinking about how important accuracy is. The next thing that came up, which was really interesting, it's really interesting to me as someone who doesn't work in government, which is that it really enables terrible meetings, right? It enables like the worst kind of meetings in which 14 people are sent along in a note taker, in which a lot of people are not contributing or listening, they're just allowing the notes to happen, in which the people who are presenting aren't engaging, right? And there's this idea that, you know, what are meetings for? In particular, we had junior people who were talking about like suddenly just having loads of extra reading, right? And the idea that if you had missed out on an important meeting, it was okay because there were notes, right? There's another, I think, really interesting point here is that, like, previously, you might have had one individual making excellent notes, right, that were canonically the notes. And what we have now is everyone's all full notes, right? And that actually there's all kinds of things that happen culturally there. And then I think most importantly, and I think this is like something that happens in a very like slippy way, that you're like, has anybody ever been to a meeting and everybody leaves and 2 of you are there at the end and somebody says a thing about somebody else and oh no, it's now been emailed to everyone, right? So like, and that's a like non-trivial issue, but that actually it speaks to the fact that there are loads of things that happen in meetings that are not work related. If we're collecting personal data about people, we have to ask their permission, right? And we have to manage that properly. And I think to go back to the culture idea, what does it mean if everything you're talking about is recorded and heard? There's an overhead here. In parallel, like I've worked with a number of organizations to look at this. HR people do not like meeting recordings, right? And if you're going to have them, you need to be really clear on how they are used. You know, if someone has a grievance, are they allowed to use the transcript or not? there's something here as well about that actually, particularly as these technologies and tools are used in the context of working with the public, what are the safeguards there? And there was a story just today about a health organization in Canada where somebody had left and their Otter AI was turning up to meetings and emailing them all the outputs, you know. And so there's loads of things that people have worked on for decades here that are being eroded. And that if we are capturing everything in writing, I mean, what are we going to do with all of that? Is it helping anybody? I doubt it, but it equally makes more risk. So we made a thing, it's here. That is not a good slide, is it? That C needs to be on there. I'm sorry, everyone, that was very poor. But what we've done, in order that not everybody has to be an expert and have done loads of AI ethics training, is we've come up with a framework with prompts. So we've got prompts about people, resilience, and environment, and trust. And you're taken through those. It won't cover everything, but one of the really important parts of it is it will certainly ask you things that you maybe haven't thought of and need to go and look at. There's a mural canvas and a list of questions if you want to do it in the room. And I think the last thing that is like really important about this and why making tools is important is in all of the work I do, right? What I see come up loads is that people feel something is not right, but they don't know how to talk about it. And they feel that it is trivial, or they don't have evidence, or that maybe they will bring it up and then a boss will say, no, that's okay. But as people who are making things every day, you are the experts. And I think it's just really important not to make things that are weird, right? If you feel uncomfortable, if something within you thinks, I'm not really happy about how this works, but you can't articulate it. Like, one of the things we were hoping here is in making a tool, it would help people to voice those niggles and the things they can't really talk about. So here it is, better slide. Don't have a QR code because like they're evil. But yeah, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rachel. And hopefully that second mic, this one's switched on there, so hopefully that is coming through. We've got some time for questions. A reminder that you can use slido.com, and the code is 2554962. But it's nice to hear different voices. So who in the room would like to ask the first question? I can see a hand up there. Wait for me to come with the tiny microphone. And please do speak into it for our online viewers. I'll come to you next. Excellent.
Thanks, Rachel. I was just curious on the environment point, particularly of those prompts, because it wasn't quite the ones that you pulled out specifically, but I'm sure you had loads come up. And just because it's something that I have, perfect. Yeah. I've brought it up, particularly in our agency, about kind of the tendency now to record absolutely everything and to generate meeting notes and to also then kind of save a lot more video. Yeah. And I've kind of challenged us back a little bit to say, can we get some stats on who actually watches any of this back, right? Because there's a few things that is useful for, but I'm worried that we are like generating so much content, and particularly the kind of sustainability impact of storing all of that and processing that and getting it in the first place. I just wondered how much that might have come up with the councils you spoke to, and was that something that was front of mind, or was that seen as lesser than?
I think that that was less front of mind in this project. But one of the things I would say generally, right, is I think there's a really interesting cultural thing, right? So I know whenever I organise an event, regardless of what the event is or how it works, one person will email in and say, is it going to be recorded, right? And I have worked with people who feel like because that person has asked, we now need to do that. One of the things I would say as well, so this is my opinion here rather than, is that actually making a video good is quite hard work, right? And making a video that is kind of difficult to watch, maybe isn't accessible, is really easy. And I think that one of the things generally we're not thinking about is quality, you know, and so I think there is overall an issue around not just environmental impacts of storage, but equally privacy. And some of the organisations who I work with are now deleting everything after 30 days. You know, and so actually, if you want to keep something longer, then you have to be really purposeful and intentional about it as well.
Maybe like 1 in 1,000 times. Where it's something that someone might need to revisit in a few months' time, and it's really an end of project thing that is useful to keep. But most of it, no one's going to come back and watch your
Be bold, delete things. It's going to be fine.
Thank you. Hi, thanks for the talk, Rachel. That was really cool. My question is a little bit less intellectual. So one thing that really struck me was your slide of don't make things that are creepy and weird.
It's so true, though.
And I'd love to know, in your experience and from the stuff you've seen, have you got any like good examples of creepy and weird things that you've seen?
I mean, so there's a lot of, I would say there's a lot of things that make it into policy papers that if they were real would be really weird, right? Like a lot of things that are about everything being totally joined up around the individual, seamless all the time. Actually, in real life, from the user end, most people neither need nor want that, you know. And so there's very often, right, there's a difference between what the incentive is from the policy end or the idea of what a perfect internal system looks like, and what that means when it gets contact with the real world, right? And the real world is messy and difficult. And so I'm doing quite a lot of work on digital ID at the moment, which is like a prime a thing that you could make in a way that is non-weird, but you could equally make it in a way that makes people very uncomfortable. And I think there's something about clarity and purpose. And like, I know definitely I've been in loads of meetings where you just have to say, do we think that's okay? Do we think people will want that? And if you are able to create a moment and let people think about what that really means, very often, like, and if they're thinking about it from the perspective of the individual, the family, you know, and so, and like, I think it's really important to think about what it means in social care, for instance. And so if you're vulnerable and if you are allowing a person into a very vulnerable moment in your life, you can completely understand from the like how important it is to have an accurate record of the conversation, but actually to have something listening in when you're being, you know, at your most open, it changes everything, right? So there are loads of things as digital products that are seen to make it like to be things that are likely to make everything easier, but that line can be very wiggly, you know, and that it's kind of, we have to navigate it with the intent of building trust, I think. Done.
Right, thank you. I think we've got time for one more question, if anyone has one. Otherwise, I might finish with a quick one. Some of those pressures you mentioned at the start are quite big.
Mm.
How optimistic are you that people will be able to resist some of those pressures and question a lot of these tools?
So what was interesting from when we made consequence scanning originally, what we learned is that if you empower the people on the product team, a lot can change through the course of making deploying, right? And that sometimes those things are incremental, but equally, if not everything needs to be raised at the beginning, or not everything is apparent at the beginning, and that I think the best products change over time as they are being made, deployed, maintained. And I think there is it's like there's a role for like nudging things along and nudging them the right way. And I definitely know that not everyone has the confidence or the appetite to say, no, this is the worst thing ever, right? That actually, if you're able to point to a number of related impacts or outcomes that people haven't thought of over time, then it tends, like, things tend to move, I would say. And so it's like no drama, my approach. So thank you, and I'll just, do I have a thank you slide? I don't know. No, I don't. But thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. I'm going to invite Katy to the stage and give her the little mic again.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Great. Thank you. Lovely to come after Rachel. Rachel and I know each other quite well. We used to work together years ago, and I love that our worlds are colliding here again today. I'm Katy. I'm Chief Delivery and Engagement Officer at Westminster City Council. We are in Westminster right now, and I will be talking a little bit about some of the work we're doing at Westminster, but to start with, I'm going to be talking about bins, or rather the fact that councils are the front door for the services that people use day in, day out, and ultimately they are often the first place that people will interact with government, and that is through local council. And I tried to think of a good joke about bins, but they were all rubbish. What barriers are we facing day to day? It's really nice to see some people from other local authorities in the room, and I hope there's some online as well. So we do have this thing where we have the same services essentially being repeated across the country, but two residents in different parts of the country could have very different experiences around how they interact with that service, depending on the processes and depending on how we design them. There isn't that consistency and standard. It's a really challenging landscape as regards to sort of technology suppliers. They're often not designed with users in mind. We're using legacy software that is clunky, both for staff and for external users too. And then there's this growing demand. We are in a position in the world right now where demand is increasing on all of our public services, and that's particularly apparent when we face that within sort of a local government perspective. So that's housing, social care, and so on. And so that urgent demand takes priority, but then we don't give the time to the prevention models, which actually could be saving money in the long term, or the service redesign, which really could be thinking differently about how we do this. So councils are consistently unhappy with the technology that they use, and they find that it doesn't meet the needs of the staff and it doesn't meet the needs of the users. And we spend $2 billion per annum on IT, with $1 billion of that spent on software applications. And this has really wide-reaching implications. It directly impacts staff and their day-to-day. It directly impacts residents and the quality of the service that they get from us. And with that comes poor procurement as well, which limits the ability for us to ensure that we're creating user-centred services. Locked out or locked in? So in some research that I have looked at working with TPX Impact, we found that housing services with there was just 3 suppliers. Can you believe that? 3 suppliers that have won nearly 70% of competitive tenders since 2015. There's an obligatory cat picture there. I led some research with all of these lovely local authorities as part of the local digital fund, really to explore the role of procurement of technology and identify opportunities of how we could improve it. It's widely acknowledged that within housing, technology doesn't meet the needs of users, and it hasn't been updated for years, perhaps. It's old technology, a sticking plaster approach to how it's been, built over time. It's not interoperable, and it doesn't give the functionality that we need today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of those findings. So here you can see some of the different quotes that came through from this research. So just picking out a few, we can see here that a local authority is saying no one's thought about the strategy, and we've got this big long shopping list. So when people are procuring, they're going, what have we got already? Well, here's a list of what we need that software to do next, rather than thinking about the user and the future and what you might need from that service as well. Another one saying we'd always find we'd miss something, we'd write those requirements, but yet it wouldn't be landing right. We wouldn't be asking for the right thing. Contracts being quite vague. I've seen this personally as well, having that sort of competitive edge to understanding those contracts and holding suppliers accountable. But actually, what we're also hearing from the technology suppliers, because we spoke to not only local authorities and housing associations, but technology suppliers from across the country, is they said, actually, we want to be really engaged up front. We want to create that right solution, and we want to be working with you more closely. Sometimes people say we decided on a solution before working out the problem we were trying to solve. Executives say, I've seen a shiny thing and I want that. Yes, of course. You get approached by suppliers all the time saying this is going to solve all of your problems. And who doesn't want all of those problems to be solved by that one thing that you can buy off the shelf? But here we're asking people, the team, sort of, what is it you're doing? What are those outcomes that you want? How are you getting there? How would you like to see that journey work in the future? Those are the right questions that we should be asking. And then also just talking about the amount of time that's required to do proper engagement and involvement around evaluation of tenders. It's a lot of commitment. So there's a whole research report I can share on this, but to distill down some of the opportunities that we saw, there's different stages to the procurement pipeline: define, procure and manage. And at the beginning, there's more opportunity here where we could be setting standards, that we could be holding suppliers accountable, and that could be coming from a policy level where we're essentially saying we want good data, good technology and interoperability, so we can have a modular approach to tech, but that standard needs to be set centrally. We can be using this procurement as a lever for systemic change, so thinking differently about what that might look like and the standards that we can hold ourselves to accountable within local authorities too. And then is there a way of us thinking about how we can work with different sized organisations? There's lots of incumbents that are doing are creating this technology in the way that it's being used right now, but actually, are there more disruptive models in the market, and how can we be having procurement models that enable us to work with them as well, because that can be really challenging. And then in the procurement stage, really involving staff and residents to shape those requirements. And I'll be talking a little bit about some of the work we've done at Westminster to bring this through. And then just really simple, it sounds very obvious, but this shared view of the procurement journey, being really clear about what all the stages are and who needs to be involved. And then as we move into that management stage, how can we be outcome focused with our suppliers? So it's not just the delivery of the thing, it's like, where are we trying to get to together? And then collaborate with councils. We've been doing some of this so we can build this collective buying power together, because we are essentially running those same services and working with the same suppliers. So from all of that to what are we doing today? Here's some of my lovely colleagues from Westminster City Council. What we've done so far. So we have been working on some very large procurement projects. I oversee the procurement of our digital projects, and we've been finding we need to bring people together earlier, which might sound very obvious, but ultimately we often just get to the point of the requirements and then we bring the team together. But instead, we're essentially saying for a discovery stage, we need those representatives from legal, from procurement, from the services and the subject matter experts. We've been going out and shadowing officers in their day-to-day to really understand, what does this look like? You using the existing systems? Where are you finding this challenging? What else can we do about this? We've not only been doing the kind of usual service design approach around mapping processes and user journeys, but we've really been thinking beyond the sort of list of features and specifications. And then really thinking about strategic, who do we need to involve at a very senior level within the council so we can make sure it's aligning to organisational strategy. And then excitingly, we also ran a hackathon, because hackathons are back now, and we looked at how we could prototype some key problem areas, and I'll be showing you some of the outputs of those in a bit. And then additionally, what we've been trying, demos of products in use. So we've had loads of really great sharing sessions from the local authorities recently, looking at the existing products and seeing how they're using them, and people telling us the real deal of what this is like day to day for them, not just the shiny demo that you get from the supplier. But as part of our tenders, we're going to be stipulating specific user journeys that the suppliers will need to demo to us in their products as well. And then additionally, just thinking beyond this technology implementation. So what happens when we get beyond setting it up? It's about adoption, it's about support. It's not just about new tech solving these problems. It's very much about how it embeds with our staff and how they can use it. And then just around suppliers, so early market engagement, joining together with other local authorities. We've got lots of groups coming together via the London Office of Technology and Innovation, MHCLG, Open Digital Planning, that are doing a lot to really influence and shape these discussions with suppliers as well. And then thinking about what we can do with open source products like LocalGov Drupal, or challenger products like PlanX, which are taking one bit of the planning system and saying, how can we improve that and really focus our attentions there. But welcome, GDS Local. I'm so pleased to see this launching this week. And I wanted to call it out because we are so pleased to see this. And the key things that are coming through, I've highlighted one which is, absolutely on topic to what I'm talking about today, which is about shifting how councils procure and buy technology, shifting that monopoly of legacy tech and improving innovation. So thank you. Welcome. We're really pleased to be involved, as I'm sure so are my colleagues across different local government organisations. And one thing that I pulled out from the press release was this quote around local councils are already demonstrating the power of digital innovation by using AI tools and creating services that deliver better outcomes for residents. And I say thank you for acknowledging that. We are doing good work. It can continue, keep improving. And what I'd like to talk a little bit about some of those examples that we're looking at in Westminster. So Westminster City Council, as I said, we are here. It stretches all the way from the Thames right up to the Harrow Road, Paddington. It includes Covent Garden, Soho, Pimlico, Hyde Park, Regent's Park. It's the centre of London. But with that comes a very wide and disparate demographic of people within that local authority that we are in right now, with over 200,000 residents, 5,000 staff and 25 million visitors per year, which is very different to any other local authority, I think. At Westminster, I'm really pleased to say that I work with a team of really skilled individuals, of people who span the skill sets from product, delivery, design, research, data, software engineering and technology. And we come together in multidisciplinary teams to look at solving problems for our residents and staff. And that might be building products in-house where there isn't anything else on the market that meets the needs around what we want to do. It might be procuring and customizing technology that's already out there. It might be beg, steal and borrowing from anyone else that is making things and sharing stuff between different local authorities as well. So the first one I want to talk to you about is a productivity tool that came off the back of the hackathon that we did. So we brought together planning officers in a room with our data engineers, our software engineers and our designers. And we had some core problem statements that we looked at around how they were finding their day-to-day challenging. And we ended up prototyping using Copilot, but we ended up building in Snowflake for reasons I can probably tell you in the break. And with this, we built 2 prototypes that are now in the hands of officers. One is a consultation summarizer. So that brings all the information that's coming through to our planning officers in their day jobs and says, like, how can you summarize this in a way that's useful? And then also there's a file uploader that is literally trying to work around the clunky software that we have in-house right now. These won't be permanent tools. These are quick fixes, but they're allowing us to experiment with some of the agentic tools that we have in our hands to see how we can create things that are more efficient for our planning officers, and ultimately to free up the time to do the jobs they're supposed to do and have more face-to-face time with residents, with businesses within the borough. This is Clean Air Routes London, which launched a couple of months ago. This is an interactive map where you can go on and you can plot your route from A to B, and it will give you a walking or cycling route, which you'll have the best air quality. So this uses data from our systems and also works with sort of environmental forecast models. I think what's great about this is it's looking at the problem around air quality exposure and thinking about health as a root of that, and essentially it's a preventative model for thinking about people not accessing our services later. We've got, this is a romp around all of the different things that we're looking at the moment, and I'm sure I could give probably a 25-minute presentation on each of these examples. The Microsoft Contact Center platform, which has just been relaunched. So we had a lot of issues with our contact center in that it wasn't really up to scratch. It wasn't doing what we wanted to do. Our residents, were hanging around, waiting to speak to our call center agents. And really, we wanted to use technology at our fingertips to see what we could do to change this. So we've launched multi-channel, so people can get in contact with us in the ways that they want to. That could be through WhatsApp, that could be on the phone, that could be text, that could be web chat through our new chatbots. As you can see here, the vision is around digital where possible, but human when it really matters. And I think this is what it's all about. It's allowing people to contact the council in the way that they want to, quickly and easily. But ultimately, it's about saying, if you want to call us and speak to us on the phone, we're there and we will speak to you. And having sat in, and I think it's so important that our staff do this, sat in on our contact centre and listen to the calls, I can tell you the people that are calling in really need that help and guidance in navigating some of the services as well. There's also some other exciting things here around, using Copilot appropriately to summarise case notes in a way that other people would have been writing these all up at the end of the calls themselves. They're still checking them. There's still a human involved. And then things like repeat caller history, so identifies where people are calling numerous times about the same thing. So how can we escalate those problems higher up to make sure they're being solved? And since launch, we've reduced this wrap-up time of people on the phones to a short amount of time, which apparently saves 500,000 minutes per year. So some of these equations, I think we're still figuring out, and I think it's important to sort of extrapolate and understand, but to sort of say, well, what does this give us, and where are we in a year's time with this transformation? Report It. This is a reporting tool that anyone on the streets of Westminster can use, and it uses image AI to improve the customer experience and accuracy of reporting. I've got a demo for you in a second, but the idea is that you can be out and about, you can get your phone out, you can take a photo, and it recognises what that is. Is it a pothole? Is it a bin bag? Is it a bike? And then it routes it to where it needs to go. And I think what's really important to say actually with all of these, including everything from those sort of efficiency tools with Snowflake in planning and right through to this Report It tool, is it's been the service transformation behind the scenes that's made a big difference here. We can't just slap on a tool that takes a picture and it sends it through, because where does that go? We've had to redesign the processes, working really closely with the services themselves to really think about being able to track this report and make sure it actually gets resolved. And right now, having launched all of the different services in this particular Report It tool, we're now thinking about that post-reporting journey and how we can improve that as well. People talk about the Deliveroo model, where you say, like, where is your report? Where is it? Something along those lines, just so people don't then ring the call centre and ask us what's happened to their report. We should be able to tell them. So let's see if this video works. If the sound does or doesn't work, it doesn't matter, because it's just jaunty music. Right. So fast. Wonderful. Demo in action. really interesting, Rachel, you brought this up earlier around some of the transcription tools, and we have been piloting some of the tools within adults' social care because there's lots on the market right now. We haven't decided which, if any, we're going with. And I think there's some really good reasons around that, which Rachel raised around, the privacy, how we're collecting that data, what we're doing with it. Are people confident with us around what decisions we might be making with that data? And also they're really expensive, quite a lot of them as well. So, that does factor into things. But ultimately what we are trying to do is have that more face-to-face time with service users and save time by staff. Can the tools give us that? I think we're in this emerging space where we're trying to figure out what they can do. And then internally, we've built this product, which Ethan, one of our incredible data scientists, would be happy to do a much longer presentation on and give it, much better detail than I could. But essentially, it's saying we are using Gen AI. So how are we monitoring that? And that could be from our chatbots internally. That could be the things externally that our residents are accessing as well. How can we provide assurance that we are using tools that aren't hallucinating or have bias within them? So he's created this tool that we are now trialing, and it's giving us sort of grades for the sentiment around, the outputs that are coming out of some of these tools. But I will do it a disservice if I try and explain it in 1 minute. So I feel like if you're interested in that, we can definitely give you more information. And then finally, just around the things that we're doing at Westminster, I really just wanted to raise that, it's not an ad hoc approach to trialing things and doing pilots. So I do think we have been in this sort of AI pilot phase, and we've been making sure we're trying to shift into a more strategic phase where we've got really strong governance around it. So whilst we've been developing first use cases, we have got a framework, an assurance board. There's decisions that are happening at a really senior level within the council. We've developed a sort of AI lab, which essentially is a team of people that are working deeply with different service areas to see what opportunities there are around things like using data for demand prevention, or thinking about different ways in which the tools that we've got could be applied across the council. And we have got co-pilots. Haven't mentioned it too many times in this talk, but we do have co-pilots and AI adoption officers who work across the council, identifying where we need to give people additional support, because we've always done that for technology, Microsoft applications in our case, but in this case it's Copilot, and making sure that people are part of ongoing research, as is the quote here around, someone saying how they found Copilot was really helpful for them. Are we still making sure those tools are in the hands of the people that need them? Do they know how to use them in a way that is helpful to them? And also, are we always questioning the use and how we could be using it more appropriately as well? So in summary, AI is already improving local services, but the procurement and the adoption and the governance really is key to making this work going forward. And I'm really pleased that we've got this sort of charge ahead around national consistency to enabling this local progress, because I'm really happy to join up and share the love, share the things that we're making. We are also prototyping and trialing tools being made by other councils as well at the moment around demand prevention or legislation and things like that, which is really great to see. And ultimately, like, better technology is about improving trust and efficiency and outcomes for our residents, because these residents want services that work quickly and easily. Thank you.
Katy, thank you very much indeed. I will come to the room for questions shortly, but I'm going to go online for the first one. And a reminder that you can use slido.com 2554962. Somebody already has. And they say, Katy, fabulous to hear all of this. How will you prevent the quick fix tools from becoming permanent solutions?
I think we are in that phase where we're trying out a lot of things, and it's not just Westminster, it's all sorts of organisations across government and the public sector that have been saying, like, what can we do with this? I'm really clear, because as part of our strategy for AI, we're making sure that we're not going to just have those quick fix solutions, and ultimately those things will break. They are sticking plasters at the moment. They are not the things that are going to have longevity. What it requires us to do is make sure that we are coming back together, and by coming back together I mean both in the sense of all the different local authorities that we work with across the UK and in London, but also within our organisation, to review and understand, like, what value are these things bringing to us, We do have a very sort of product first approach in the mentality about both being user centered, but also looking at like how can we measure the value and the outcome of what we're trying to do? How can we quantify that over the time? And is it giving us what we need? I think there's a sense here where there's a lot of emerging technology and things look very different now to how they looked 12 months ago, and they're going to look very different again in 12 months time. The example I gave where we'd used different tools that were in our toolbox. At the moment, we've got things like the Microsoft tools, we've got Snowflake, and we've got others to see what's most appropriate around solving the problems we have right now. But it's revisiting it, and I think this is a bigger question to the whole sector at the moment, actually, of how do we stop being in that sort of pilot space and shift into something that's more embedded. And I think that's where the procurement question comes in, because it comes back to like, how are we engaging and working really collaboratively with technology suppliers to making sure that these are things that have longevity and they're not just quick fixes.
Brilliant, thank you. Any questions in the room? I felt I heard some murmurs, especially when GDS Local was mentioned. Not to put you on the spot, but
so I was very happy. And can't wait to get involved. I'm really pleased to see that colleagues from councils all across the UK are involved, because we need that representation. And the problems that we're looking to solve with GDS Local are the ones that we've been banging on about for quite some time. So I'm really pleased that it's happening and that there's some coordination there. I think there's a lot of these sort of repeating patterns that we've had where it felt like we've just been having the conversation over and over in regards to like, how can we work better with suppliers? How can we give residents that joined up experience? And to have the strategy and the policy and essentially the delivery drive coming centrally, I think will really support us. So I'm intrigued to see what comes next.
Great. Any other questions in the room? Got one at the back. Just wait for me to come with a tiny microphone.
Hi there. It's a rather trivial question, but do you believe that there will be a need for the construction of large data centers across London to keep upkeep with the amount of data streams that AI is kind of producing right now?
I would say that's probably not my specialism. And it's interesting you talk about data centers, because I think some of the local authorities around the country will be looking at that as an opportunity for where they might be able to use their land in different ways. It would be unlikely to be in Westminster though, just because the land is so pricey here. But yeah, I think there's probably some other specialists who'd be able to talk on that topic much better than I could.
Great. Any more in the room? We've got some love for your slides online,
Oh.
Katy. So asked if we can share those afterwards.
Oh, well, thank you, everyone. It's great to be here.
There was a question I missed to Rachel, but I'll sort of put it to both of you in a slightly different form. So the question to Rachel was, should citizens be involved in the scanning of consequences for AI tools? I suppose, Katy, the version of that for you is, how have you involved residents in thinking about some of these issues?
Yeah, I mean, every time we are looking at the problems we're trying to solve, it needs to be rooted in the user needs. So that means we need to go and talk to residents. So with planning, it was interesting actually, because the users are property developers and architects. So we've had new engagement forums with those, but also we will go and talk to residents around our services, around home improvement, and every single local authority is doing that. I think back to some of the time I spent on pandemic response, where I was looking at more of a co-design approach, where we were working with those who were disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. And that was where we really had to work closely with those who have lived experience and those who have trusted relationships with those individuals. And that is still the case today. And we have a really fantastic communities team at Westminster who we work with when we want to go and reach out to communities and speak to them.
Sorry. Yeah, so I would say that the tool we have as it is, that is really for QAing what you have against what it will do in the world, right? And so rather than just QAing it against what it's intended to do, thinking about what it isn't intended to do, I think for participatory work, you want to turn those things around, and so it's really about helping, like in the work that I've done with communities and publics,
you're very often asking a different kind of question rather than what is this intended to do. It's like, what do you want it to do and what do you don't want it to do? And so there is a role, but not, I think, for this specific thing.
And I am really interested to dig into research around where citizens and residents are okay with us using AI and where they're not okay with us using AI, because I don't want to delve into projects and programs and prototypes that are in areas where it's an absolute no-no. I want to think about what's the appropriate use and where are people comfortable with that. And I know that there is, research coming out of various different places which touches on that as well. But yeah, I think for us, it's talking to our residents all the time and also using the data that comes in through things like our call centres and really understanding, where the squeaky things are that aren't quite working that we need to add a bit of oil to fix.
Brilliant. Well, Katy, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
I'm not going to keep you long with the parish notices. We've got a few other things. Well, one other thing you might be interested in, which I'm involved in, Connected by Data has an online community of practice for people who are doing data and AI public engagement. And that next one is on the 10th of December with the Office for National Statistics and the Office for Statistics Regulation. So do go to the Connected by Data website if you'd like to find out more about that. Our next event is December. Where is it?
Whitechapel.
Where? Watch out. I will actually put that up on the screen. Should any of you want to sign up, we'd love to have you join us. That's the evening of Wednesday, the 10th of December. We will be at CPF in Whitechapel. And we'll be hearing about trying to do policy making with a long-term view and communities around all of the sort of public sector reform energy. You can find that on the TransformGov Talks website as I go through all of those now looking ill-advised Whitechapel slides. A reminder that if you'd like to help us organise this, if you'd like to speak, if you'd like to sponsor, do grab me or one of my colleagues afterwards, or email transformgovtalks@gmail.com. If you want to help us out, tell someone how much you enjoyed tonight and encourage them to sign up. Our website is transformgov.org.uk. We have recorded this, probably not to particularly brilliant quality, but hopefully good enough that people will be able to watch the brilliant talks that we've enjoyed. So please do point people in the direction of our website and use that. All that remains for me to say are some thank yous. First of all, to all of our sponsors for making this possible, for all of you for coming in person and online, and some great questions tonight. And do join me in a huge thank you to two brilliant speakers this evening, to Rachel and Katy. Thank you very much.